All right. So, so you see the first slide, right? Like the how it's leveling the playing field and stuff. Okay. I don't know if this presentation is going to be that nerdy as Vanessa's making it out to be, but basically like I know we've been talking about like local community power a lot and like distributed energy resources, but I kind of wanted to go back to fundamentals and like explain like why we're looking at local community power as a solution and as to like why these distributed energy resources are leveling the playing field for consumers, or more like if they were ideally used, how they could level the playing field. So in our area, like the DMV area, we've faced like the highest increase of rates in the whole country. So you can see like based on our map, like the DC one, we faced an increase just from 2024 to 2025. Our rates jumped almost 24%. And over the last 5 years, it went up 93%. And there's been a lot of arguments as to why our rates have risen because of aging infrastructure, closing old power plants, and data center demand. But all of these factors, it's not like a single one that has done this, it's everything in combination. And that is because that these factors, they all contribute to the rising price of electricity, mainly because of how it's formed. So the way it works is you see like over the region, you have prices that are actually higher in DC, meaning like the actual like wholesale market price. So the rate that we see as end users, it's meant to capture like the local price of electricity. So like how it varies across the region and really like how it's supposed to like even though there's fluctuations throughout the day, throughout the year, it's meant to capture all of that. But the actual local price of electricity, the ones that like are in the wholesale markets, that's based on your local demand as well as the available supply of power that's ready to meet that demand. And so that's why like in this Midwest, you're gonna see lower prices because the Midwest has like a bunch of power plants in that area. And us on the East Coast, the DMV area especially, we're primarily consumers. So we have higher prices of electricity. And basically it's like if you have higher demand, if your sources of power are further away and you have to use more expensive sources of power, your overall price that your consumers face is gonna end up being higher. So like theoretically, like LMP, so the local price of electricity is formed with like congestion, loss, and gen energy. And when we say energy, that actually means the last unit of energy needed to meet that demand. And I can like talk about that at the end, like appendix slides and stuff, but basically, if you have to import power from further away and you have to use things like coal power plants, things like that, the price goes up. And I really like this example actually, because like, so this is one of like the local price nodes that you see like in our market that serves us. And these 2 points, they're only 2 blocks apart, but there's a 16 or $14 difference in the price. So this is how local the price of electricity gets. It's like even though DC overall, we're paying one rate as like all the customers, the real price of electricity changes block by block. So if we understand that price is local, like just the local price of electricity, then like the way we solve a local problem is we have to have local solutions, right? So that's where things like local community power, distributed energy resources come in because we're using all of these local resources to control the consumption of power or provide some local supply of power. And when we say DERs, like it means it's a device that is distributed on the grid, and it's more local than that. It's like it's local enough to be in your home. And all of these devices, they have things like schedules. You can receive inputs from a user, and they can even like track certain conditions. So like this Google Nest thing, it's showing that like if you're enrolled in a utility program, like I'm enrolled in the Dominion demand response program, and so like Dominion will reduce or yeah, it'll reduce my AC during the summer when they have higher peaks. So that's the same thing that this type of thing does, where it's like you can change your conditions to like use more clean energy or avoid higher prices. And so all these resources, what they do is they basically like they help you choose when you want to pull or push electricity. And that was one of the examples. The other one is balcony solar. So the reason we're all talking about balcony solar too is because you don't actually have to interconnect to the grid. You can just say like, hey, I want to use balcony solar to meet the demand that I have. And so again, that's the same thing of if you're reducing that local congestion with local power, then it's like that congestion price that helps form that local price goes down again. And then with like traditional rooftop solar, the reason we like still want to talk about that and we still want to include that in the conversation is because it still is a local power supply. So it's like if you have more solar on your grid, you can use that to meet your local demand instead of having to import it from out of state. And like DC specifically, DC actually imports 98% of its electricity from surrounding states. And so we're always getting basically screwed because we just don't have enough in like within our jurisdiction. Um, okay. So those are like some of the local resources we have. And like all the programming that we're doing, it's basically to try to maximize the capabilities of these DERs because like even if like one individual home reduces its consumption, it doesn't really mean much, right? But when you have a large amount of homes under like that single price node, like a single node, local one, that's when you're basically saying like, all right, I'm gonna overall reduce my consumption, my congestion. And then like you have whole areas that are basically saying, hey, I'm gonna like use this lower price of electricity to let's say like charge up my battery at home. And then when you're having higher prices, you're using the power that you've already stored up. And even then, it's like, even if you don't have a battery, again, you're just saying, like, hey, I'm going to reduce my congestion when my price is really high. And so these things, in order for them to be maximized, it's like we need to know certain things about the grid. Like we need to know, hey, like, can I actually push power in this area? And so those are like some of like the studies we've done in the past, like the hosting capacity study, things like that. But yeah, basically this is why DERs matter. And I don't know if there's any more like any questions. I just wanted to go through this pretty quickly so I could answer those. Yep, I think that's it.
Thank you, Ramita. Okay, the any questions you can prod or explore anything, Ramita will most likely have answers. Um, so anything that you've never gotten a chance to ask or anything from her presentation. We have in the chat from Sheena, what is transmission loss?
Transmission loss is like um transmission loss is so you know how we have big power plants and a lot like for example in our market, the one that's the biggest is in Ohio. So if power is being transported, that's like the loss of transmission or transportation. So it's like a delivery fee kind of. Does that make sense?
Great question. Um, One of the barriers that I've seen just personally is that my thermostat with my AC heat pump
Mhm.
um, can't connect to the grid. It's not able to be manipulated by somebody else. And I'm wondering if, that can be a huge barrier in terms of working with manufacturers to make certain that they're selling AC or heat pumps that are capable of connecting to the grid and actually being able to participate um, in demand side management.
So are you saying like the thermostat is not able to?
Yeah, it's a carrier and it's an older heat pump and it's proprietary to carrier and I basically it won't I can't connect it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I had that too. My heat pump, I don't know how old it is. It's almost like 25 years old. But I think once I updated my thermostat and I had to enroll in the program. It's like I got an email from Dominion, then it worked.
Right. They maybe they'll send you a thermostat, but that thermostat doesn't work with every system. And I think this is an inherent problem that we have overall. And I think one thing that really needs to be looked at from a manufacturing is as we're putting in more and more units. I mean, live in Montgomery County, and it's just amazing the number of townhomes and everything else that's going up all around me. But if we're not putting in place systems that are actually eligible to participate in such a program, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. So I do think it is something that is really, and for the state and local government participants on this call, I think it is something that really is worth looking at and working more closely with the manufacturers
Yeah, that's true.
because this is the future. I mean, demand side management really, it's the least cost before you need to generate anything to save the electricity.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Over.
Yeah, thanks for that. We don't happen to have any, bizarrely, any manufacturers on this call today, but that is definitely something that we could ask one of our heat pump manufacturer partners to talk to and see if there is any way that local governments or associations of consumers could help sort of help broker a solution there with our utilities as well. I'm sure that we're not the first to look into this, but maybe we can have some more intel from them about what is getting caught and where.
Thanks, Vanessa. By the way, I'm John Garrison. I'm with DC Passive House. I've also I've been meaning to reach out to ACEEE as well because they do a lot of this more nationwide assessments and have a special program also on home building. So I see Bob's got his hand up. So
And we normally also have someone from ACEEE on this call, so today
okay.
is just a really weird day. Bob.
Yeah, I'm glad that issue came up because demand management definitely is the cheapest way to save electricity. And one of the things I was going to say is that one of the nice things about all the electric systems that I have, at least, is they're all Wi-Fi enabled. And so it ought to be possible to, with software, uh, appropriate software, to have them be able to be controlled. I know my EV charger can do that now, and I participate in the Dominion program. So that certainly ought to be possible. And again, the electric systems kind of inherently provide that capacity by being Wi-Fi enabled. The other thing I was going to say, though, is the other half of this is battery storage and virtual power plants to help with this. And the problem now is, of course, they're so damn expensive. And it would really help if the utilities or there were programs to, as there are in some locations, to help pay for those systems to be deployed in people's homes so that you get both the backup power for the home and then the potential for the utility to draw upon it. I don't know if there's any thoughts about whether that might happen.
Ramita, it's funny to us because that was exactly one of the main recommendations in our report to the DC government and to the Public Service Commission that battery storage programs be incentivized. But Ramita, I'll let you speak more on to that, given that you've been working for battery companies.
Yeah, I mean, batteries in general, it's like it basically, I mean, it gives you control, right? Like without batteries, you don't have something called like an energy management system, energy management software. And in terms of like aggregating, like the thing you were saying, that's actually one of our showcases we have where there's this company that it's like Wi-Fi based, but they basically aggregate and like connect all of the different devices in your home so that it's like listening to not only like your user comfort, but it's also listening to like grid signals, price signals, and basically figuring out, okay, like I can reduce the consumption here, or I can like use the solar that I have here, things like that. But I think, yeah, like at the heart of it is batteries, right? Because if we know that local price is something that's variable, then something that is able to take advantage of that is storage, like simply put. So Yeah. And like I think the thing we saw too during our hosting capacity study was a lot of the times, like if something's not getting approved, that's because maybe it like produces too much power, right? But a battery system's the thing that can always like help you just like if your solar system's getting curtailed, you can just store whatever excess power you have and use that later. And even from like a wider point of view, like if you're doing that across the whole grid, like if at any point you just have more demand than usual and you don't want your ratepayers to face like a higher cost of electricity, that's when you can pull on your local sources of power, like a battery, and especially if you have a lot of them.
Ramita, can you talk about what base power is doing in Texas?
Yeah, a little bit. Base power is kind of so base power, like they do a couple things. They like make their own batteries, but then they want to install like really big ones behind the meter at home. So like usually the size of home batteries are like 10 kilowatts, let's say, 10 kilowatt hours. But then the ones that Base has been doing is like 50. And so they want to basically like deploy things that are like grid level assets, which just means they're bigger, but they just want to put it behind the meter and then also have like a subscription for the user to say like, hey, you're providing grid services because it's installed at your home and you can use some of the power while also getting some of like the benefit for providing the service. So it kind of takes like VPPs and it I mean it addresses the grid need, but it also puts money back into the pocket of homeowners. Are there more questions? I can like talk about other stuff. Can I go for the merit order example actually for a little bit? Okay. So, all right.
Wait, before you do that, Ramita, Meredith has a question. Uh, Oh, it's it's not a question. It's actually a perfect comment, and why we have included bidirectional charging in the DR showcase programming and the DR showcase showcases on this next Saturday. Because as Meredith says, this is why I see bidirectional vehicle home charging as key. I have a giant mobile battery sitting in my driveway most of the day. Yeah.
Exactly. And those batteries are like, depending on the size of your car, it's like 10 to 20 times the size of a residential battery. So it just makes a lot more sense to be using the EV battery versus like having like a whole separate other system. Yeah, so I feel like the one thing that we don't really always talk about is like this merit order effect. And this is what I was saying when I was talking about like the marginal price of where like, okay, like I have to get power that is more expensive. So like the weird thing about electricity price is not just like the normal supply demand curve. It's like as your demand goes up, basically people are bidding into the market and they're saying like, hey, I'll give this much power at this price. And the more demand you have, you're gonna have like basically people who are bidding higher prices. And when you're like when your demand ends up being higher, if you have to use something that costs more, then your whole entire like price goes up because it's merit order is basically saying that like if you show up, you all get paid the same. So like even if like you have someone who's like, "Oh, I'll give you power for like $10." If someone else is like, "I'm gonna charge you 100," but then you end up needing that $100 of energy, everyone is paid out the same, which is why it's lucrative to participate in these things, but that's also what bumps up that price. So that's like this example is when like demand is higher, but then this other example is when is like the thing that we've been trying to do with like local power, which is like if you can just reduce the demand a little bit, then your new electricity price ends up being lower. But yeah. Yeah. I think merit order is like I think the weirdest part of electricity markets. The whole like it's not an equal um it's not the way a market normally is. So I think that's where it gets a little trickier, and that's why we want to avoid having to like import power from other places. Yeah. And the other weird fact too that I found, this was like I think quite terrible, but like the how like DC has gone up by 93%, but like the rest of the top five, like it's only 66%, but that jump is still a lot higher, like our top five. So this was something that I thought was interesting and wanted to share. Yeah, I think that's all that I have from my side. If anyone has any questions, you can feel free to ask. More like technical questions or like market related. I wanted to keep this
Or
in.
terminology, like
Yeah.
advantage of this safe space to ask whatever. I've had my fair share um, of embarrassing questions to Ramita, so please feel free to ask whatever.
Jeffrey has a question.
Yeah.
Hi, yeah, thank you. So of course, this is a really good presentation. I really do appreciate you giving it. Obviously, DC is part of the PJM network,
Mhm.
and with PJM, we got Pennsylvania, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and obviously DC. You're right, does not produce its own power. They have to import it all. But with PJM, we do have producers in PJM, and do you think that that is still a contributor to the market prices that are being done, with DC just being a more or less victim of the other power producers that they do not have, but also the REC program that is in DC, because the DC REC program was very popular.
Hmm. Okay. So like we do have some power plants within our jurisdiction, but it's only 2%. I can actually there's like this one website that I really enjoy using. It's called Grid Status, but it shows you where all of like the power plants are in DC as well as like the price nodes that are local to us. So let me just share my screen again. Uh, 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 yeah. Whoa. Yeah, this thing's a little wild to look at. But okay, so if we go into just PJM, yeah, that's Pepco DC. We have a few that are in our jurisdiction, but they're not that many. It's like we still need more power plants to like not have to import as much. But I think that was also like the point of the whole FERC 2222 thing, right? Of basically being like we want
Ramita,
more.
sorry, before you go into FERC 22 and 22, can you zoom out to the region so that folks can see what the other,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So this is what I meant by we have to import. So like we have those like little power plants, but it does not compare to needing all of this. And there's one in Ohio actually, Gurnsney. It's almost 2 gigawatts of power, which is like crazy, but it serves almost 2 million people. And like in comparison, I don't actually know how big these are, but I think they're in like the 10 to 50 megawatts max. So it doesn't like do as much to hedge against all this. But yeah, we end up importing most of our power from Pennsylvania. And then the other thing that's like cool to look at too is like these maps are cool because they show the power plants, but they also show you like the price nodes. And so right now, I think because it's the weather's a bit odd, like the prices have been pretty good in our area, um, like here. But then when you still like zoom out and you go like, I guess today it's all a bit similar. That's interesting. One of the maps that I showed before, I think they show like some negative prices. Oh yeah, we have some negative prices here. Yeah, it's like crazy. It's like if you live closer to a power plant, you're gonna end up even seeing like negative prices versus like out here when you're just when you just don't have as much supply. I feel like Jeff, you had another question, but I kind of forgot when I was.
Oh, I was just talking about the rec program, getting credit for your, because DC had a very good rec program that other states, other people, mainly Virginia, because we didn't have a rec program, bought into. And I was just wondering how that worked out.
I don't know much about the rec program. From like when I looked at it before, my understanding was that Pepco was using that to keep the rates down. That was my understanding, but I'm not sure how it is now. I'm not too familiar with recs. Vanessa, would you know, perhaps?
You mean solar Rex?
Yeah.
Jeff, do you mean solar?
Sorry, I'm trying to answer you. Yes, I do mean the solar recs.
Oh, okay. Solar Rex are, and again, this is not my area of expertise, but are essentially coming from the determination, the legislation from DC that requires Pepco to derive all of its, to essentially ensure that all of the energy that it will be providing DC residents by 2032 comes from renewables. And so, in order to work up to that target, it needs to buy more renewables, and that ends up inflating the prices of the credits that DC residents and those on Pepco feeders also in Maryland are receiving. So this actually concerns quite a few Maryland residents who are on Pepco feeders who also can get RECs, solar RECs. Jeremy, do you want to add anything to that?
Sorry, I just missed your question.
Oh, sorry. Did you want to add anything to that description of why the solar RECs in DC and on some Pepco feeders that go into Maryland are the way they are?
That tracks with my limited knowledge of the topic.
Yeah. Francis.
uh, I'm not an SREC expert, but the number of SRECs the utility needs to provide are based on the state's renewable portfolio standard, or the district standard.
Yeah.
I think the percentage is higher in DC. Certainly, what you get for SRECs. I have a friend who um, lives in Maryland, but somehow is on the DC SREC standard and always brags about how much money she gets in SRECs because you get a lot more back if they're being sold as DC SRECs than if they're being sold as Maryland SRECs. In Maryland, because of weird things with there's something called alternative compliance payments. If a utility doesn't make um, or get enough SRECs, they can make it an alternative compliance payment. And because of some weird things about the amount of money involved, the General Assembly made some predictions that turned out not to be right. There's a huge amount of alternative compliance payments being paid in Maryland, and not so much in the way of SRECs. I don't know how much of that is going on in DC, but the General Assembly is trying to fix that at the moment. Whether or not they'll succeed, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Thanks, Francis, for that. Yes, the reason they are available to Maryland residents is because those residents are on feeders that are fed by Pepco infrastructure. Um, yes. Any other questions? Okay. Um, if any questions come up when we're off this call, please feel free to email Ramita. I'm volunteering you, Ramita.
Okay.
It's Ramita at electrifyeDC.org. Bob is adding that yes, DC SRECs have been yielding 300 to 400 for a megawatt for a thousand kilowatts. Yeah. A 10K kilowatt system of roughly 25 rooftop panels can generate roughly 10 to 12 solar racks per year, which is quite a good sum. Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much, Ramita. We will be sharing this presentation. Again, we are well over 1,000 people registered to the Healthy Homes Fair. We hope that we will see you there on the 21st. There is really, truly a lot for you to see in terms of new technologies, in terms of all sorts of partnerships and connections that can be made in a true sort of cross-sector fashion. So we really hope to see you there, and please continue sharing as you have been with all of your networks so that more and more people can come and learn how they can decarbonize their lives on the 21st. Yeah, that's it. Please feel free to ask Ramita questions. She's really good at explaining things, and we really need to really understand these topics to be able to push for better policies for residential decarbonization. So thank you all. And we're giving you back a fat 5 minutes to go play in the snow.
Thank you.
Bye, all.
Thank you.
Thank you.